Right now, exactly time to start. And Lithuania. Welcome everybody, people from Poland, from Lithuania. Myself, you guys know, I'm from Brazil. Currently, I'm living in Portugal. And the idea of today is a new format. It's a new kind of, it's not even a lecture. Today is gonna be a talk. I wanna talk in depth about some challenging cases. So this is a series that we planned. So every Wednesday, we start today and the following 7 Wednesdays, we're gonna talk about some of my challenging cases, some concepts. And today we're gonna talk about composites. We're gonna talk about bleaching, we're gonna talk about bonding, and I'm gonna bring back composites again. We're gonna talk about finishing, how to do a proper finishing. We're gonna talk about lasers. We're gonna talk about light curing. You guys know how much I love light curing, how much I think and I know it is important. But the idea today, it is to talk about one of my favorite cases. I don't know, probably you guys know this case already. I've shown this case before, and I want to start with that case. So let me share my screen. Anything that you want to talk about on the chat, I have the chat here open so we can talk about that as well. And this is today's presentation. So we got this nickname, Wednesday Challenging Cases. And I want to start with one that I like very much. It's getting older. It is being 8 years now. Very happy with the immediate result also, what happened to that. And only to talk about that, originally I'm from Brazil. Now I'm living here in Portugal, very close to Poland, very close to Lithuania. So again, welcome guys. Big honor to talk to you. And this is the case. I don't know if definitely I already showed it. I don't know if you guys already had the opportunity. You're probably gonna remember this case. The idea of this case, why it is so important and about this case. I wanted to do this case, this patient, only as a reminder, this patient, he was a class 3, so he was a prognet. After orthodontic treatment, and since the patient became class 1, the idea was to close those gaps here that we can see. So these are the gaps, those black spaces that he didn't like very much, not the patient and also not the orthodontist. So both of them, they asked me if there was any solution that I could find, but a solution, and this is very important in this case, a solution that was not invasive, something that was 100% non-invasive. So only a reminder for the people that already know this case, and for the ones that don't know, this is the background of the case. One thing I truly know and I believe is the importance, how important it is to do a correct planning. And the correct planning for me comes from 2 things when we're doing aesthetic dentistry, specifically speaking, directly made composites, not only, but also. So what was the idea here? The idea was first, in terms of diagnostic, the first thing I want to do, it is to understand how many colors do I need? And this I think is very important. How many colors do I need? I'm gonna need, it is not up to me to choose, it is up to the tooth. So this is the first thing important in this case. It is to understand that not all cases, and to be honest, I think the minority of our cases, we need to use several colors as I used in this case. Most of my patients, you can do with 1, maybe 2 colors. Some of them, and definitely not the majority, I would say less than 20% based on my experience. Each one of you will have a different experience, but on my experience, I would say 20, maybe less, maybe even less than 20% of my patients, I'm gonna need more than 2 colors. This case specifically, I used 5 colors. And why is that? Because if I need to close the gaps, if I need to, let's say, make more straight teeth, I want to follow some teeth that I can already see, someone that is already square and that I can copy from it. And who's already square and I can copy from it? The lower incisors, those little guys here. So let's take a closer look on those little guys because they are gonna be my template. I'm gonna base on what I'm gonna do based on the information I get from them, okay? And in a closer look, this I think it is very important. On a closer look, what do we see? That a simply A1, a simply A2, in this case, would not get me there. So I definitely am gonna need a little bit more than only one, maybe two colors for this specific case. So it's like just endo. I like to compare with endodontic treatment. It is not up to you to choose how many canals you're gonna treat. It is up to the tooth. It is up to you to diagnose how many canals are there. It is the same thing here. So it is up to you to diagnose. The more trained our eye, the more we like doing that, probably the more information we're gonna get. But by taking a closer look, what we can see here, that I have more or less, the tooth would be A1. But only A1 is very limited to describe this tooth because in the cervical region, I can see that these A1 shifts to A2, that shifts to A3. Also on the incisor region, we can see here that I have a very transparent region, a translucent, very opalescent region. I have also white dots, white regions here on the incisor, and also here, to be honest. So taking a closer look, we can see all of that. And this is important. So based on this diagnostic, I need A1, A2, maybe A3. I don't know if I go all the way to the cervical. I'm gonna need something translucent, something transparent, something very, very opaque for those white little dots there. So this is the first thing we're taking care in this diagnostic. Second thing, it is fundamental. It is to get the shape, the anatomy. So how many colors of composite I'm gonna use, and then what is gonna be the shape I'm gonna use. So the shape, I need something more square, but also I need something that doesn't interfere with the occlusion. So that's why I think in these cases, it is mandatory to do a proper wax up. And this wax up, I think it is important to do on an articulator. So we can predict, bite and some interferences, and we need to remove those interferences. So that's what I did. I took an impression, took to the articulator, on the articulator, did the wax up. So we could see there the original shape, and this is the shape that we're looking for. This is a shape that it is already adjusted. I can close the black spaces, and there's no interference, no occlusal interference. So from this point on, it is only a matter of transferring what I have in wax into the mouth. How can we do that? After etching, after doing the bonding procedure, we're gonna start with the palatal shell. So the palatal shell, we can see here, I'm using not freehand. So I'm following what? A silicone key. This is a silicone key I get by taking an impression of my wax up model. So by following that, I'm gonna place this silicone model into the palatal region of the mouth of the patient after etching, after bonding. Awesome. So after layering the composites, I want to focus a little bit more on number 11 on the upper central right incisor. I'm using not a transparent, it's almost transparent. This is a translucent whitish color for enamel. So I'm specifically using an enamel color, something that it is translucent, not completely transparent, and a little wider. So this is the first layer I'm gonna use. And again, it is not freehand. I'm simply following what I already got, what I already obtained from the wax up. So this is a color. I need something wider. I need something translucent. Let's call it enamel white. Very thin layer, very fragile actually. In this step, this is very fragile. So we need to do a very thin layer because we need space for the other composites. And if there's one word that I would make an abstract of the lecture of today, it is this: thin layers. It is thinner than we're thinking. It is thinner. When we need to use multiple colors, more than 3 colors, all of those layers, they will be incredibly thin. And I want to talk about that. How can we control this thickness to make them really thin? After I did that, I want to do what? Now I need to opacify the original incisor area, his incisor, the patient's incisor region, and I need to create new mamelons. For that, I'm going to use an A1 dentin. Now I need something that it is opaque. So this is an A1 color, and you can see, and this is important, that here I am overlapping the color into the tooth. So I have to cover the tooth a little bit. It's not to the margin. And we can see here on the schematics on the left side how I need to overlap this dentin color here so I can opacify the region here. I need to opacify his original incisor region. So 2 words to define today's lecture. One, it is thin layers. The other one is overlapping. We're always overlapping colors or overlapping our composite into the tooth. It is always overlapping, very important. And the thinner it is, the better it is. After using the A1, now I need to go for what? The other information that we have in the incisor region. And those are the 2 little white dots that we can see here and here. So I'm going to use a very opaque color, let's call it opaque white. Most brands, they use this name. Also on distal, I'm using a kind of a more colorful dentin. This is also a dentin color. And now I'm going to use an A2. So there's a little bit more color than incisor. So I'm using on distal to get a little bit more volume on distal. This is very important from central incisors, but it is even more important on the laterals. And I want to show this on probably the last slide. We're going to see this, how important it is. It is important on the centrals. On the laterals is even more important. So now we're using A2 as well. So overlapping there, always overlapping. In between the mamelons, and we can see in green, I'm going to use a transparent color because I used the translucent color before as a palatal. Now I'm using a different one. Now it is transparent. It's transparent like glass, like water. The other one that I used was like milkish water. You can see through, but not quite. This one is transparent. Looks like a little water composite. Very small amount, as the opaque white. And you can see here on the left side, on the right side, sorry, that opaque white is barely nothing as this color as well. This color is gonna be all the way through, but a very thin slice. It's a very, very, very thin amount. So sometimes we need to use an explorer to use that, a very, very delicate instrument. I want to talk also about instruments, which instruments I think they are very useful in order to use here. So we need very precise, very delicate instruments to do that, okay? Enamel trends there, something that it is transparent. The name doesn't matter that much here. What matters more is what the composite do for us. And this is gonna be made based on what we saw, okay? Last layer, it would be the easiest because it covers everything that we did, but again, we need to control thickness. And you can see that now I'm going probably half the tooth. I have to cover half of the tooth, but with a very thin layer. Again, I said that thin, it would be the word for today. So I'm gonna cover everything that I did with a very thin layer of the same enamel that I used on palatal, enamel white again. So the milkish, kind of transparent, translucent color we can see here. And I think here on the right side, we can see how thin it is. It's incredibly thin. We have to come down, we have to spread very thin. And also, since it overlaps the tooth, the eye doesn't get to understand, to see where it is tooth, where is composite, and where is this transition zone. So this is the idea. When we're doing composites, when we're doing static dentistry, and it doesn't matter if it is ceramics or composites, it's all of a matter of fooling the eye. So the more we can fool the eye, the better. So those are the colors that I used. Which colors, where I used, and how much of them I used. Most of them, it's a very small amount. Most of them, because it is a small space and there's too many colors I have to reproduce. So we need precise instruments again. So let's take a closer look here. This was the original shape. And this is how much composite I added, but I also added on the buccal. I know it is very thin. We're talking about probably 1/10 of a millimeter, 0.1 millimeter thick enamel, maybe less than that. But even though I covered a little bit more, so we can remember that I used enamel probably around here, the enamel color, it is around here, okay? So awesome. Let's take a closer look. This is after polishing. And if you remember, I'm gonna bring back this subject. I can't remember if it's gonna be on 4th or 5th lecture. It's not even a lecture, it's a talk. So I can't remember exactly if it's gonna be in a month, when we're gonna talk about finishing. So there's a specific day, Wednesday, we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about finishing. So this is not today, but only remember today. Easier to polish after 2 weeks. Easier to polish after 2 weeks. I'm gonna bring back this subject. It is easier to polish because the composite is more polished, because the composite, it is also hydrated. So this final picture is not immediately after, this one is after 2 weeks after final polishing. Also, so this, now we can see immediately after on the left side of the screen and after 2 weeks on the right side of the screen, okay? Taking a closer look now, comparing upper arch where I worked with lower arch, which I based my restoration, we can see that using those colors in that combination, in that amount, very tiny amount, it is looking good. It is one that I like. I think there's some, I can see changes. So this is already 8 years old. I can see easily changes that I do nowadays. I tend to do nowadays. I changed it a little bit, the distal of the lateral. So today I would do the distal a little rounder, but this is particular. It's not a matter of right or wrong. It is more a matter of what do you prefer. But again, I think it is a good outcome. So this was original shape, the original shape here. We can see the wax up that I did, so the new shape that I wanted, and comparing with the final result, we can see here. Remember when I said about the A2 that I used here, the A2 on distal, and I said that on the laterals is even more important. And why is that? Because while I was doing the composite in mouth, I noticed that if I increased a little bit the distal of the lateral anatomy, it would be more harmonic. I would get more aesthetics out of it. So I changed it a little bit. I increased a little bit more here. So this is why I think it is very important. If we do first, we diagnose and we can prepare and plan ahead, but small corrections, they're always necessary. It's not something that you need to stick to very strictly. So we always have room to fix and to make a little better. So I want to come back real quick and let's see faster what I did. But before, one of the things, remember that most of the layers, most, if not all of the layers, maybe opaque white, the white dots, that one maybe I haven't used composite wetting resin. So another thing that I think it is important today, I need help. when I'm working with too many colors, too many composites in a very thin, with very thin layers, and it's something that helps me spreading this composite, so this composite doesn't get stuck to my spatula or my brush or whatever you're using. So composite wetting resin is something that I'm using a lot. Probably, I would say 99% of my interior cases, I use the wetting resin. I simply find it is very hard to work on interiors without spreading very well. And one very important thing, you should never use the bonding agent. I know people that use the bonding agent. The bonding agent is terrible for that because the bonding agent contains HEMA and solvent. Because of what? Because the bonding agent has also the primer, and the primer has HEMA, which is hydrophilic. And this is very good for denting, but very bad for the composite because being hydrophilic, Coca-Cola, wine, coffee, whatever, it's gonna get stuck to it on the last layer because you applied if you use the bonding agent to do that. The other thing is alcohol or any other solvent that the primer has, and it dissolves the composite. So you should never use the bonding agent. Use a material that was designed to do that, and the wetting resins, some composite wetting resins from Ultradent is something that I've been using for since forever. There's not of those hydrophilic components. Is 100% hydrophobic and helps you a lot in spreading the layers. So again, let's take a quick look, a quick recap, only to see step by step both of them, 11 and 21. So both central incisors, right and left upper. So enamel white, then A1, a denting opaque. So the first one was translucent whitish enamel, then opaque A1, creating new mamelons and erasing the original incisor region of this patient. Now I'm going to use the white dots, OW, and also a little A2 on distal. If you guys remember, enamel trans or whatever other name, translucent, I need very transparent color in that region. And after that, I'm gonna cover everything with EW. The same thing that I did on both central incisors, I'm gonna do on the laterals as well. Basically, this is a sandwich where the bread is enamel. I have enamel on palatal, enamel on buccal, and the filling is dentin colors with some dressings like opaque white, like the ketchup and the mustard, it's gonna be ET. So it's a sandwich that I did in all four of the anterior teeth here. Before polishing, after polishing, we will come back with a specific talk, a specific case of polishing. So I'll bring back, just only remember, after 2 weeks, more cured, more hydrated, easier to polish. Awesome. Composite that I use, and this was 8 years ago. It was called Vitalessence, very good composite. So depending on which country you are, you probably might find Vitalessence. A2, A1, this is dentin color. IRB, I've been called ET, so transparent. The iridescent blue, IRB, is a transparent color that I used in between the mamelons. OW is the opaque white, and PF is the enamel that I used on palatal. I called here enamel white, on palatal and on buccal as well. More recently, and depending on the country you are, I guess most of Europe, here we have Mosaic and Disposal. Mosaic is a newer composite, but has the same color scheme. So basically works very similar. The consistency of it's a little bit modern in terms of consistency. It's easier to spread and to sculpt Mosaic, but basically you can also do with Mosaic, A2, A1, ET, the transparent color, OW, the white dots, and for enamel, it's called enamel white, which makes things easier. Also, again, composite wetting resin. How can we use wetting resin? And I want to suggest some instruments that I like very much. Style Italiano, a group of the dentists and teachers and professors from Italy, they have the LM kit. Very good, but personally, I have a favorite one, which is the brown one. The brown spatula, for me, it is very good. The brown one, and to be honest, the green one as well. The brown one and the green one, for me, those are my favorite spatulas, IPCs, or composite modeling instruments that I like. They're very precise, very thin, and very fragile as well. And why they are fragile? Because they need to do what a brush does. What we need from an instrument when we're working, it is an instrument that forgives the pressure that we do. So it's like a shock absorber on your car. So it needs to absorb the shock. It needs to absorb the pressure. That's what the brush does. That's what a rubber spatula will do. That's what very thin, very delicate spatulas or IPCs, they will do. So one advice I would give, this is a green one that is a favorite. It's one of my favorite. One student they took away from me. I don't know who took, but I lost mine. And it's a Safident. If I'm not wrong, it's from Switzerland. Very good instrument, originally made for ceramics, but I've been using for, I don't know, more than 10 years for me and many others for composites. This is a Hufridis spatula, American Eagle, and Cosmident. Cosmident, they have very good spatulas as well. You can use the brush, and you can use the composite wetting resin with all of them. This is from Mycerium. Those are rubber pointed spatulas, very good. I prefer for the palatal more than for buccal, but again, it is a personal choice. It's a matter of trying and getting to know what works best with your hand. There is no right, there is no wrong. Me, personally, I love the brown spatula from LM, from Style Italiano, and I love my Hufridi, and I loved my Safident until someone departed our ways. Brush, very good, not for me, particularly speaking. I have several friends that work wonders with a brush. Again, something that forgives how much pressure you're applying. Okay, my friends, the idea of the lecture today was to be very concise, very in-depth, coming to talking about this case, a challenging case, challenging because I needed to be very 100%. We wanted to be 100% conservative. Challenging because of how much information this particular patient had in their teeth. So when we're talking about information, usually this information comes in the form of opacity and transparency in the same tooth. When it is there's a big difference. Whether it is transparent, it's really transparent, whereas opaque is very opaque. Usually those are the patients that we have more information and we need to copy that and we need to reproduce that. And usually we're gonna use more colors to do that. This case I described, I did in 2012 and I wrote the article in 2013. In January 2014, it was published. If I am not wrong, this one, it is important. The abstract is in English, but the article, it is in Portuguese. As any other information I shared today, it's gonna be a huge honor, and the ones that already know me, they know that I like to share my email, so feel free to contact me through the email, through Instagram, through Facebook, whatever it is easier, so we can share a more in-depth talk about this case and also the ones that we're gonna talk about as well. So right now, my friends, I have nowhere to go. So I wanted to be concise in this first one, to spend no more than 30 minutes, but I have all the time in the world. If you wanna talk about this case, if you wanna have any questions, if you wanna bring something to the table, this is the idea. I want to stimulate you guys, I'm sorry, to participate as well. So feel free, any doubts, any comments, any ideas, any cases that you have, feel free to write on the chat, or if you prefer, feel free to write me a direct message on Instagram or a message in Facebook or an email as well. It is always a pleasure. It is always an honor, and I think it is I'm more than happy to do that. And also, is my duty as a colleague and as a teacher as well. So thank you once again. I have a friend here that I see. So people from Poland, people from Lithuania, people from Czech. There are people from France as well. I don't know if it's kind of France, Colombia, maybe Malaysia. And again, my friends, very happy to be able to share this. One last thing. This is important. This one last thing. There are 4 lectures I have on Ultradent's database. So if you go to Ultradent's website, which is www.ultradent.com, and if you go to Continue Education, there's a tab, Continue Education. You're gonna see there's several online courses. All of them are excellent. Me particularly, I have 4 lectures, one about light curing, 3 about composites. One of those lectures about composites. It's called Tips and Tricks, so it's more lighthearted. 2 of them is a little bit more advanced. So one advanced 2, one it's the continuation of the previous. So also feel free if you want more information, more in-depth information you can have there. But this particular case, in-depth as this, that was the first time. So thank you all for joining me. And Alicia, thank you. See you next week. Since nobody has any doubts, it was a big pleasure. And I hope to see you all next week. Next week, I want to do an invitation. Next week, we're going to talk about whitening. If there's any challenging cases, any cases that you have any doubts, feel free to share. Feel free to send me through email, through Instagram, and we can talk about, okay? If I don't get any cases from you guys, I'm gonna bring my cases that I would not say struggled, but I had to think outside of the box to get it done. So I'm looking forward to get your input. So feel free to send me as many challenging cases you had. If you want to share, even with the good outcome, some cases that I don't know, you might be a little insecure in what you should be doing, feel free to share. That's the idea of today. And the idea is that we can more and more interact and participate, and you guys can bring your own doubts and concerns and experience as well to the table, okay? The experience is more fun. So again, my friends, I would like to thank each one of you for joining me again here. If it is your first time, welcome. Thank you for your presence. And I'll check you guys. We're gonna meet again, if everything goes right, next Wednesday, same time, same place, same everything. It's the same link, same password, same everything. See you guys in a week, okay? Thank you so much. Always a big pleasure being with you guys and being able to share the experience and my, let's say, work with you guys. See you next week. Bye-bye.